To order the Queen Anne's County Planning Commission meeting for Thursday, April the 10th, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Public comment? This will be for any project that is not on the agenda today. Mr. Foster?
Here or there?
There.
All righty.
And you're limited to 3 minutes.
Yes. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. Jay Falstead from Queen Anne's Conservation Association. And I just wanted to highlight something that happened this past weekend in the Maryland Senate with the passage of Senate Bill 931. And I hope Amy will give an update when her time comes up. But I've categorized this bill as land use abuse, and it deals with solar projects. It should be offensive to everybody on this panel and everybody in this room, because basically what 931 has done is allowed the Public Service Commission to do an end around to all comprehensive planning in the county. It ignores citizen input in the comprehensive plans. The whole entire episode, from the hearing that happened back in February, where the public was basically dismissed, up until this past Saturday's floor debate, the entire Eastern Shore was opposed to this bill. Every county commission on the Eastern Shore was opposed to it. The legislature pushed it through anyway. I give all this as background because I hope you all as a commission will pay very careful attention to some of these solar projects that are going to be coming down the pike, because this is just the beginning, and it has the capacity to fundamentally change the entire look of the Eastern Shore forever. And so anyway, I just wanted to urge you to pay very close attention to some of these projects as they come up. They assuredly will. Now that the barn door's been opened, I can imagine these solar companies are going to start putting out letters and getting even more aggressive than they have already. So thank you very much for the time.
Thank you, Jake. Any other public comment? Mr. Sutherland?
My name's David Sutherland. I live in Queenstown, and I appreciate the opportunity to address you and make a few comments to you. I normally don't do this, as you probably know, and you know, I don't know if you guys have ever found yourselves thinking about issues or things that impact you on a day-to-day basis, and get angry or get frustrated, and you don't know what to do, and or how to address it. And you know, people like me that kind of sit in the background and listen and try to learn. I found myself really coming outside that box and feeling compelled to get more involved and more engaged. And it's around the solar issues. And there's a number of us that have been in the background trying to work on this. And it's a horrible thing that's happened. It really is a horrible thing, what they've done, the hard work that you guys have put into planning and zoning and trying to protect the integrity of our communities and doing it the right way. It's a hard task. And Madam Chair, you've done a great job in leading that effort, organizing us, getting us to be more reasonable. And a lot of this is common sense, right? Common sense stuff in your community, and you take care of each other and you listen to each other and you respect each other's opinion. That did not happen with this legislature at all. In fact, I would argue that it's a total violation of the public trust, the way that they handled this. I believe it's a violation of the public trust doctrine, the way that they are taking our rights. They're stomping on us, on the Eastern Shore, and our environmental community abandoned us. They abandoned us in this process. All of them who feed at the federal trough, that talk about farmland protection, and there's only thank God for Steve Klein and the Eastern Shore Land Conservancy, probably the only one other than Jay and the Farmland Alliance that really stood up and even said anything. I mean, what the hell is going on there? I mean, but they'll come in here and they'll talk about planning and zoning and all the little things, protect a critter here and protect a critter there, and they don't like the personality of the developer, and it becomes personal, right? That's wrong. We got to keep away from making these things personal, but I think we got to be really professional. I think that what we got to turn this into a bad thing into a good thing. There's a silver lining to this. You had all 8 counties, thanks to excuse me, thanks to the leadership in Queen Anne's County. I believe that we had almost eight counties that opposed that bill, and you had the farm community. You had a lot of people that normally don't get along or don't come out of the woodwork, and they ignored it. I've never seen that in this legislature, and it's a signal. It's a signal they're going to stomp on us, and they're going to continue to do that and usurp your authorities, our representations. And I would just urge you, being fair and being good people. I think that I really think that they have tickled a sleeping giant here, and we need to get coagulated. We need to get organized and fight them. And I think in terms of solar development, don't think about 5%. Plan around 2%. And let this is our Eastern Shore. They don't care about us. I mean, so in any case, I don't want to get off on that soapbox anymore, and I already have. But I really appreciate your time. Again, this is very unusual for me, but this is something a lot of us care about, and we want to support you, and we need you to support us. So thank you.
Okay. Any other public comment? Okay. Is there anything on? Okay. Updates, legislation, legal matters.
Good morning. Amy Murdoch, Planning Director. I'll start my update on legislative matters with the close of this year's session, which was very intense, as I'm sure I've been updating you on, and as you've heard this morning. I'll start with there are really 2 bills that directly impact us. And the first I've been telling you about is the accessory dwelling unit piece of legislation, which did pass, House Bill 1466. That piece of legislation requires that each jurisdiction permit accessory dwelling units as a by right use, and seeks to reduce some of the review criteria to expedite the review, and also looks to waive impact fees on accessory dwelling units. This bill doesn't have an enormous impact on Queen Anne's County because we're a county that already does permit accessory dwelling units by right. And in truth, most of our accessory dwelling units, the size of those accessory dwelling units don't reach the threshold of the waiver of the impact fee as proposed in the bill, because the waiver of the impact fee is connected to a very small dwelling unit, I think under 900 square feet, and that simply is not the norm for the accessory dwelling units that we see in the county. The second bill is obviously the solar bill, Senate Bill 931. While I agree with the comments that you have heard and have enjoyed partnering with members of our community and the group that was largely led by Jay Falstad, our perspective and my role in working with MACO completely is contemplative of all of the comments that you heard, but at the MACO table with the amendments that I've been updating you about throughout the session, we had a realistic understanding of the preemption of our zoning that was already in place. While we would love to see our local zoning be upheld and the integrity of our comprehensive plan be given the due respect that we've all put into it and the community has put into that plan, losing our local land use authority already happened. So seeking to have zoning authority at all, we considered to be a big win during the legislative process. Those amendments were supported so that ultimately, as this bill sits, when it is enacted, we will be in a position to update our zoning code to have siting standards of solar, whereas our code, as it sits today as a conditional use in our utility scale solar district, can be preempted. But with this language, the Public Service Commission is in agreement that it will honor the siting standards in every jurisdiction, and that, as we all know, that the quickest route for solar developers is to concentrate on open agricultural land. We worked hard to, I started by asking for a corridor similar to that in Queen Anne's County, and that didn't make it. But this 5% limit in our priority preservation area is a bigger win than we had without it. Without that 5% cap, 100% of our entire ag zoning, including our priority preservation areas, was basically preempted. So I think that in the next session, we're going to see a push to lower that percentage. In Queen Anne's County, our priority preservation area acreage is almost 20,000 acres. And 5% of that is almost 10,000 acres. That's a lot of acreage. And if every jurisdiction ponies up 10,000 acres of its agricultural land, its priority agricultural land, we would exceed the renewable energy portfolio goals for utility scale solar. So a lot of really compelling arguments were made to that point, to both the House and the Senate, but 5% held. 2% would be more reasonable, but 5% is better than 100%. And I know that Jay Falstead won't appreciate my saying so, but it is a kind of a win for us. Additionally, we were able to get an amendment into that legislation that would prohibit the siting of solar, utility scale solar projects in our key Tier 1 and Tier 2 growth areas, and also within zoning districts that are mapped medium and high residential. So there is some protection now within our growth areas where some of the solar siting has occurred on the Eastern Shore already and we continue to see those applications. So it's not a perfect bill, but it does, there is an acknowledgement of local zoning that we didn't have. There is a commitment on the part of the Public Service Commission that if a jurisdiction reaches that 5% cap in its PPA, that the county may implement its own local zoning that could prohibit utility scale solar. So it is a step in the right direction. It could be a firmer step. In terms of local zoning being under fire, that's absolutely true. We've been seeing that in recent sessions, and we're going to continue to see it. To that end, you know that we have been in disagreement in the implementation of the adult cannabis provisions, the recreational cannabis provisions. We have come in line with last year's legislation, but our commissioners sought support to move legislation forward that would allow us to have more restrictive setbacks. That legislation failed. So we are moving forward. Stephanie has conveyed your recommendation on the update to our cannabis regulations to come in line with minimum state standards, which keeps the county out of court, which is very important. And the commissioners received your recommendation this past Tuesday night, and they'll set a hearing date. We don't have that date yet, but once we have it, we'll let you know. Otherwise, I only have two very brief staffing updates, and they're really just anniversaries I want to share with you. Our staff in recent weeks has hit a couple of milestones, and I would like to publicly congratulate Vivian Swenson, who at the beginning of April has celebrated her 40-year anniversary working with the county. So her expertise is clearly amazing and laudable, and I want to publicly acknowledge that and let you know. And also, our own Rob Gunter hit his 17-year anniversary with the county. That doesn't seem as a huge an anniversary when you compare it to 40 years, but 17 years working in this field, working for the county, has brought an amazing level of expertise. We rely on Rob, and I want to publicly congratulate him as well. So,
Good job.
Ask a question.
Sure.
MACO made a list of recommendations to the solar bill. Were any of them adopted?
yes,
All of them?
most.
The last one wasn't, correct? Just the one about the limitation on acreage or something like that?
Mako hadn't put that forward. That came,
Okay.
yeah, that came
I
from
saw
the
that
Farm
somewhere.
Alliance.
Okay, thank you. That's all I want.
Yep.
Thanks.
So do you know if that one passed?
No, it did not.
Okay.
The request was to reduce to 2%, and the bill contains the 5% limit to the PPA, Priority Preservation Area.
All the other recommendations were accepted, which were kind of in line with what we do in this county anyway, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we based a lot of those on
Look like our,
our
cut paste.
standards.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, projects. Amended subdivision, 4X Farm Properties. Doug?
Good morning, Doug Summers, County Planner with Queen Anne's County Planning and Zoning. We're back for 2411-0440, in which the applicant is proposing to amend major subdivision 03-05-02-0008 by modifying the landscape buffer. The applicant is requesting relief from planting the required landscape buffer under 18176D. This request was tabled by this planning commission in January in order for the applicant to work on an easement illustrating the buffer, his buffer proposal. Just to refresh, the property is located in the south central part of the county, 3 miles south of Centerville. Tax map 60, parcel 1, lot 1 is located at 516 Poplar School Road near Centerville. Lot 1 is approximately 90 acres and is entirely encumbered with non-contiguous open space. Property is located in an agricultural zoning district. In September 2005, the Planning Commission approved the Woods Heritage subdivision, which created 13 cluster lots, 2 slide lots, 1 building pad, and 90 acres of open space. The county code in place at the time required a vegetative buffer to provide additional protections for adjacent agricultural uses. For this project, a 15-foot vegetative buffer was proposed and approved to meet the code requirement. This area is not currently planted and there's no natural growth present on site. So based on some discussions at the previous Planning Commission meeting, the following provides a history and background on the agricultural buffer requirements. In 2002, the comprehensive plan forecasted an increase of growth in residential areas and thus created a goal to consider agricultural buffers around new residential development in these ag areas. The 2004 code update created agricultural buffer requirements for cluster subdivisions outside of the growth areas for the protection of existing and future farm uses. The code established requirements for mature plantings for immediate buffer capacity,
but no width requirements were outlined at that time. In 2005, based on recommendations from the Preservation Task Force that was created by the county commissioners, 18198 was added to county code to require 50-foot ag buffer for all non-contiguous development. This included infill and new development, along with outlining significant planting requirements. Following that, in 2006 and in 2007, 2 citizen-sponsored text amendments were proposed to provide exemptions to 18198. Both of those measures failed. 2008, County Ordinance 825 was proposed under the Rural Preservation and Development Act. This was to address continued residential growth in agricultural areas. This measure was tabled. 2009, County Commissioners created the Blue Ribbon Panel in response to that previous ordinance, County Ordinance 825. And in 2010, we'll see what happens here. There it goes. In 2010, following recommendations from this panel, County Ordinance 825 was withdrawn. And then which brings us to our current language. In 2012, based on the recommendations from that Blue Ribbon Panel, County Ordinance 12-9 was passed after a comprehensive review process of agricultural buffers. This ordinance would establish our current code. Ordinance 12-9 struck 18198, and agricultural buffer requirements were moved under 18176, and it became applicable to all cluster subdivisions, not just non-contiguous development. Although 18176 already existed, this ordinance cleaned up code language on buffer requirements and affirmed that buffers were required for all new ag cluster developments. They were no longer applicable to infill lots, and this was in order to avoid buffer fragmentation. Other standards that were changed were the 50-foot width was reduced to 30 feet to address costs while still allowing credit for forest conservation requirements. And in another effort to address development costs, a mixture of whips, canopy trees, and mature vegetation were permitted to decrease buffer establishment costs for the developer, but still provide immediate buffer capacity. Current code 18176D states the Planning Commission may modify the requirements of the buffer yard code section if strict compliance would not be likely to protect adjacent agricultural lands from nuisance claims or complaints. There's quite a few factors to consider relative to the permitted uses within the adjacent non-contiguous open space area on Lot 1. They are shown on this slide. First and foremost, agricultural use activity is permitted and all aspects should be considered. This could include typical plowing, seeding, harvesting of anything from corn, soy to cannabis. Includes cow, hog, poultry management, animal byproduct management, silviculture, and aquaculture. Also, agricultural activity allows for farm breweries and wineries, which includes not only the harvesting and tasting, but also warehousing, shipping, parking, and outdoor events. Other uses permitted within the open space could include accessory buildings, stables, recreation, nurseries, extractions, dredge disposal, and shooting clubs. Besides these use considerations, and to address some discussion points presented at the January Planning Commission meeting, there are also considerations to be weighed relative to the proposed easement. The draft easement proposes a 30-foot wide buffer for each lot. It may be planted in segments at either a time in which the Lot 1 owner chooses or at a time the farmer or adjacent residents choose after they receive permission from the Lot 1 owner. This slide illustrates the applicant's proposal. With it, there is a potential to create fragmented and thus ineffective buffer areas on site. This is kind of shown with the alternated colors. There's also potential to create lots that in the future would not be able to obtain an adequate buffer area. For example, for the lot identified with the blue circle in the south there, if that lot or the lot to the left would desire a buffer, then they would have to convince the southernmost lot in that white dashed area or the Lot 1 owner to plant the buffer. Although the current adjacent owners, developers, and farmers seem to desire no buffer area, the easement does not consider future uses or change in ownership. Property owners would bear the full cost of planting and maintaining a buffer not located on their property and have no recourse to ensure a neighboring buffer would or could be planted to enhance effectiveness. The agricultural buffer requirement has been worked on and vetted for over 10 years now in order to establish an avenue to protect the agricultural industry from residential development and find compromise on costs for developers. As proposed, the department does not support the amendment or the easement. The easement proposal does not meet the intent or spirit of the code requirement that has been received or reviewed for some time now. With that, I'll try and answer any questions or turn it over to counsel for any comments on the legal document, which was under her review, and to outline the findings that must be established should you choose to approve or deny the applicant's request.
Thanks, Doug. My question right off the bat is it legal to delete the need for buffer or to delete the buffer when it says it can be modified? It doesn't say you can delete it.
Madam Chair, that's a good question. When you look at the specific language, it says the Planning Commission or Director, as appropriate, may modify the requirements of this section if strict compliance would not be likely to protect adjacent agricultural lands from nuisance claims or complaints. And so something you as the Planning Commission should consider is whether a modification is a complete waiver of a requirement. And if you look at the definition of modify, it is to make a partial or minor change, not necessarily a complete waiver. So I think that's something that you all should consider and what the intent of the code is.
Okay. Another question I had is this agreement. What happens if the LLC just goes away? What happens to the owners?
Yeah, so that's a good question. And Mr. Showalter, have you contemplated that, or do you have a response to that concern?
Sure. So this, Ryan Showalter on behalf of Four Oaks Farm. This agreement will be recorded in the land records and binding on all of the lot owners. So Four Oaks Farms LLC owns the agricultural parcel. If it dissolved, the owner of that parcel is still bound by it. If it sells the property, the owner of that farm parcel is still bound by this agreement. So this agreement would run with the land and bind any owner of the farmland, regardless of the status of that LLC.
I think more specifically, so if the LLC continued to own the ag land and the LLC forfeited, how would the residential property owner seek a claim against that LLC or seek enforcement of the easement? I think it's specific to the chair's question.
Well, so the agriculture, the easement, let me address one thing to provide an important context. This is not about saving money on, developer costs. We're responding to the community's concern. And as we were talking to residents as this was being built out and talking to them about the closure of our role, the developer's role, the planting of the buffer came up. And there's unanimity in the community that they did not want to lose their views across the agricultural land. That's why we're here. We're not here about saving money.
We didn't bring that up.
I understand, but the important thing is that if an LLC is forfeited, meaning its legal existence in Maryland ends, the beneficial owners of the LLC are still the owners of the real estate. So if you have a claim against the LLC and it's been forfeited, there's still the beneficial owners of that LLC still own the real estate. You can still proceed to enforce a claim against the owners of the real estate. There's a major asset there that is subject to any judicial process. But the structure of this easement, what we essentially did, and one change was subsequent to your meeting, before we were proposing to just defer the planting and allow the lot owners to decide when they wanted to plant it. The standard before you is whether the present buffer, the 15-foot buffer, would meaningfully, protect against agricultural nuisance claims. We don't think a 15-foot buffer will do that. And so as a concession, based on the comments that we heard from you, we said, look, let's double it. So we'll defer it to address the homeowner's concerns, but we'll also give them a 30-foot easement rather than the 15-foot buffer that's provided. So if someone wants to plant something, they'll be able to establish double the width. There really isn't an enforcement claim because they have the right to enter and plant the buffer if they want it. You know, they wouldn't be suing the LLC to force them to plant it. They have the right to enter and plant the buffer at their request. But if the LLC went away, there still would be beneficial owners who have that asset that would be subject to judicial process.
Do we have any questions?
But what happens when the dust, the odor, the drift, whatever it is, crosses over the neighbor's property because he didn't plant a buffer?
Well, that could happen today, right? If a 15-foot buffer, realistically, if you plant a pin oak, it gets to 30 or 40 feet wide. The farmer could go down and trim it at the edge of 15 feet. The landowner could let it grow into their yard or not. That's not meaningfully going to stop any dust or odor or drift anyway. So, you know, our thought is that if it has to be planted, it's not going to meaningfully prevent nuisance claims anyway. And we're trying to be responsive to the community. If this planning commission says, we're not interested, plant it, we're just going to plant it. But I don't think it's going to prevent a nuisance claim for drift or odor or dust. And frankly, I don't think a 30-foot buffer is going to change the claim for odor either. But 30 feet would be more than what's presently required.
The county does an inspection on a foundation or the electrics in a new home. Is it solely for the benefit of the current owner?
The county inspection of the construction?
Foundation or the construction of the home, a new home.
No, I
Is it solely
don't
for
think
the
so. I mean, the
benefit
purpose of the
current
building code is to provide, you know, life safety considerations for the
owner?
occupants of that
Also, current,
structure.
future owners, is it also
That's
for
correct.
that too?
Yep.
Do you know? So I wish my memory was better than it is. I just turned 69, and that's one of God's gifts to me. But I do remember that there was quite a bit of angst. No offense to Lindsay, this right now is when I'm wishing the previous attorney was here, because he
No
would
offense
know the
taken.
history of this, I think, pretty good. That, you know, there was quite a bit of angst on developing this, quite frankly, watered-down regulation. Mr. Gannon, I would have said you shouldn't have been able to sell a lot without planting that. I think that's a better regulation. Just do it and be done with it. And in your description of farming activities, now maybe you should be adding solar to that sentence, right? And will they feel the same when it's a solar panel out there? You know? Maybe a month ago, no, I don't think over 2 months ago, we just turned down another request for people to change the buffer requirements. I just don't know that you've convinced me that I should change my vote on that one or this one. Okay. I'm trying to give you ample opportunity to change my vote.
No, I hear you. I mean, ultimately,
I'm willing to listen. I am. I just,
we're here to advocate, but it's really, we're advocating for the community's concerns, not Mr. Gannon's. You know, if this planning commission said, acknowledge that 15 feet doesn't meaningfully protect against those claims, 30 feet's more, but, you know, there's a potential for a segmented or fragmented buffer. I acknowledge that's true. I mean, we're willing to offer them a 50-foot easement so that if somebody wanted to do it, they could plant a 50-foot wide easement. We're really trying to be responsive to the community, which wants to maintain their open views. If your decision is no, just plant it, we're not offended, but it's the buyers that we're trying to be responsive to. So, you know, I acknowledge that if, you know, the lot that Mr. Summers identified, the blue dot or icon, you know, they have a relatively small amount of frontage. And it's true that if they want a buffer in the lot that has the white around it, which is lot number 3 on the plat, if that lot owner does not desire to have a buffer, there's probably not a lot that they can do. But if Mr. Gannon just plants the buffer at 15 feet wide, I'm not sure that the outcome is really any different. So if they could maintain the views that they like today and potentially have double or triple the 15-foot buffer if they and their neighbors agree to plant it, I think that's a better outcome. If you don't, it's really more something that affects
I'm
the
struggling with
residents.
two aspects of it. One is the change in the modification to deleting the buffer. That's number one, and then because the regulations say that you can modify it, but does not say you can delete it. And number two, when you guys presented this to the planning commission back on day one, you agreed to the buffer as part of condition to build it, be able to build those homes. So those two items, I am just struggling with what your perceived hopeful outcome is.
So let me respond. I mean, modify, it doesn't say you can modify the buffer. It says you can modify the requirements of this section. So I think what that means is you have the authority to make changes to the section. We're not saying waive the buffer and eliminate it forever. What we're saying is,
That's exactly what you're asking for.
no, it's not really.
Well-
What we're asking for is to defer the planting of it and let the lot owners decide if they want it. And we're offering to double the width of the buffer that would otherwise be provided. So we're giving them twice as much as they would otherwise receive, and also giving them the ability to decide when it would be planted. What we are making a commitment on, if the farmer decides the farmer wants it to prevent ag conflicts, it would be 30 feet wide. So right now, Four Oaks Farms would be required to plant a 15-foot buffer, and that would be the end of it. If the agricultural user decides that there's a potential for conflict and they want to have a buffer, they will plant it at 30 feet in width, not 15 in feet. So we're doubling what's required. If they decide that they don't want it and they're okay with the residences and the residents prefer that open view as opposed to having the buffer, we are deferring its planting, but we're not asking you to waive it forever. We're actually giving them the ability to decide when they want it and giving them the ability to make it twice as wide. And, you know,
So
in
I'm
this.
gonna look to council for that.
Yeah, so I think to the chair's point, the effective waiver is that the property owners, the residential property owners may never plant it. And so in effect, that would be a waiver. So the planning commission has to be comfortable going forward that there may never be the buffer if they were to approve this with the easement as drafted.
But the sole purpose of the buffer is to prevent or minimize conflicts between agricultural activities and adjacent land uses. If the farmer doesn't think the buffer is needed and there's no conflict, and the landowner prefers the open view and doesn't think a buffer is needed because there's no conflict, then the purpose for the buffer doesn't exist. It can always still be planted, but the sole purpose of the buffer is to reduce conflicts. If both parties have the right to establish double the width that you currently require, and they both decide there's not a conflict that warrants a buffer.
Actually, I think currently we're requiring 30 feet
Well,
according to
your-
what Doug brought up, right?
Your current code requires 30 feet, but this subdivision existed before that. So this subdivision
Exactly.
requires 15.
So you're already lucky on one hand.
Well, I mean, that's just what was required at the time. Lucky or
Right,
not.
but you only have half that you have to under today's rules.
And so, you know, I mean, the concession.
And I'm afraid of making a precedent by this group of commissioners for the county on, if we allow this, we're setting a precedence for all the homeowner programs.
I don't know that you are. I mean, you're making a decision on the basis of this one plat and this proposal. But I hear that
I
that's a
understand your
concern.
arguments.
So you would need to differentiate this specific agricultural parcel and the residential development from others within the county in order to protect the planning commission going forward from future applications.
So tell me, what do you think, Ben?
Madam Chair, thank you. I have great reticence about this proposal, but one of the ones that the chair has not raised is, and I don't doubt the sincerity of the people that are coming before us today, but I do have reservations about the attitudes of subsequent owners, both farm and lot owners, who may not feel the same way. And I have been involved with, tangentially, airports, where people buy houses next to an airport, knowing full well what's there, and then like to raise issues about what's going on with the noise and all that. And I worry about the subsequent home purchaser or lot purchaser who comes here and knowing full well that they're buying a house in agricultural land, find out that the buffer has been modified in this particular instance. And I admit, it's their obligation to read the deed and understand the proposal. But I think we're opening ourselves up for a huge amount of criticism. And I certainly am also, the way the language, I read the language in the code, actually what we can do is strengthen the requirements. It's to protect the farmland rather than diminish them. And we're being here asked to diminish them. Thank you.
Tom?
I would second Mr. Tillman. In addition to that, reiterate, because I think it's worthy what Mr. Summer said, that this does not meet the intent and purpose of the ag buffer in itself. And to Mr. Showalter, that if a particular landowner desires to increase the thickness of that buffer, right, to enhance it, they're more than welcome to do that on their side of the buffer. If they don't think 15 feet is adequate to protect them from drift, odors, noise, fill in the blank, they're certainly willing to do that if they don't feel that 15% protects them well enough. So I'm with the previous speakers.
Kathy?
I have a lot of concerns, all of which have already been addressed, so.
Mr. Sylvester?
I'd like to, can I ask planning staff one question?
Sure.
How many of these things are in the pipeline?
Don't forget Jeff.
Okay.
Rob Gunter, Principal Planner, Department of Planning and Zoning. We don't have a number. We have heard there are more behind this one, but we don't have an exact number, so I'm not entirely
Do you have a
sure.
gut feeling, or just don't want to
I
give
would
it?
say probably maybe 2 or 3. I don't know how many communities out there are not built out that could then come in and do this. We haven't looked at that, but
Thanks, Rob.
And setting a precedent, right?
potentially.
Mr. Reese? Can you hear us?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair and fellow commissioners. I echo the sentiments of Mr. Tillman and Mr. Lee 100%. I think it would be not in good practice of the Planning Commission to reduce this buffer or allow the farmer not to plant it. Thank you.
Okay.
So if I could just address those last, Mr. Tillman's comments in particular. I mean, I think the important thing, this will be recorded in the land records. So I understand your comment, it's incumbent on people to read, and they may not. But they would be buying a house without the buffer present. They would see that there's no planting there. And the distinction, bless you, that we're proposing would be to give them additional space on the farm parcel for a buffer. So you're right, that somebody could plant a 50 or 80-foot buffer if they took up their backyard to do so. Under this concept, we're proposing to defer planting to address the current residents' preferences and to give them additional land on the farm parcel for that buffer. So, if we're willing to make it 50 feet wide, if the Planning Commission would accept that, that would be more than triple what's required by the plat, nearly double what's required by your code. And it's true, they could supplement if they want, but the difference would be they could plant 50 feet of the farm parcel and not use their backyard for their buffer. If they wanted more, they could plant 50 feet of their backyard and make it 100 feet. So we're all willing to give them additional land area on the farm parcel and the flexibility to plant it. But we're trying to accommodate their preference to not lose their views today. And again, understand, this is not developer driven. If you deny it today, we're just gonna plant it and move on. It's the community that we're trying to be responsive to address their concerns and preferences.
Do we have to vote on it, one way or the other?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions from the commissioners?
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, ma'am.
Be it resolved that the Planning Commission regarding the Quest by 4 Oak Farm Properties LLC for approval for the modification of a landscape buffer and as more particularly described in Department of Planning and Zoning File Sub 24-11-0440. Hereby finds this amendment to the major subdivision is not consistent with 18-1-76D of the Queen Anne's County zoning and subdivision regulations, and hereby denies amended major subdivision approval.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry, if we could defer voting on that motion, if you could open it for public comment.
Oh, correct. Public comment. Jay Fawcett?
I was just going to urge you to support your department's findings and recommendations. It sounds like you already have, and reject this proposal. And yeah, I'm not going to add anything to it. Thank you.
Okay. David Sutherland?
Can I make a statement, a public comment? For the community itself? My name
You have to come up and you have to introduce yourself and where you live.
Okay, great.
And,
Hi, my name's Judy Whitbread.
And you have 3 minutes.
Okay. And I live in Woods Heritage.
I'm sorry, what is your name?
Judy Whitbread. And I live at 209 Woodfield Court in Woods Heritage. And the community as a whole definitely is not in support of the planning. We've come here today, several of us, and several others have stated in our community meetings that we are not in favor. I understand your point of view in being hesitant to set a precedent that might be against it, but as far as we're concerned, we really don't want it, and that's all I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Kathy, you want to continue?
I think I,
Yes, so the motion is on the table. There was
Okay.
just a defer to second or vote on that motion.
Do I get a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Let's take a break. We're good? Okay, meeting's back in session. Next on the agenda, citizen-sponsored text amendment applications. Stephanie Jones.
Yep. Good morning, Stephanie Jones, Long Range Principal Planner. Just to let you know, we do have 4 citizen-sponsored text amendments, but you will be seeing the last one next month. So just so you're aware of that. The first one, 2503, maximum non-residential building height in the suburban commercial district. This is to increase that non-residential building height from 30 feet to 40 feet within the suburban commercial district. When you look at the definition of building height, basically you're looking for a peaked roof. It's from the average ground level to the midpoint between the eaves and the peak. And then if you're looking at a sloped roof or a flat roof, it's from the average ground level to the top. So just as an idea, building height on gabled roofs, it's not to the maximum, not to the point of the roof. So that suburban commercial district is intended for a variety of commercial uses, limited light industrial. Residential uses are not permitted in that district, and generally it's not served by public sewer. So there's some characteristics of that district. And then there is another avenue within the code that allows the increase of a building height. The applicant would have to submit a variance to the Board of Appeals. It is a bulk standard, so they could request a variance through the Board of Appeals. There would have to be a hardship or a practical difficulty be found. That is another avenue. Since 2002, we've received 5 height variances, so it's not something that's seen very often. Other specific standards to the suburban commercial district, there are design guidelines. So you're looking at architectural standards. You're looking at basically screening of those architectural standards as well. So basically, the suburban commercial district, I think I did attach a map to your staff report so you could kind of see where the district is located. It is kind of sporadic throughout the entire county. It's not located on the island. But basically, it kind of comes in 2 different forms. It's either multiple parcels kind of all clumped together really along the thoroughfares, or it's kind of one parcel here and there, and those are traditionally for, existing commercial uses that have been pre-existing. So staff recommends a favorable recommendation, basically, but also to look at the need, obviously, that I indicated to you a little bit ago, and then also looking at the change in the landscape that would occur with the addition of the 10 feet.
Of the 5 variances, how many were approved, or were they all approved?
I think maybe 3 or 4 were approved.
Okay.
Yep.
But they weren't all approved.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
And you said 02, not 22, or 0?
So since 2002, there were 5. Yeah, sorry.
Second, just want to be clear.
Yeah.
Okay, who is here for David Kaufman, or is David Kaufman here? Oh, you are. Good morning.
More successful on this one. So Ryan Showalter on behalf of...
Take it personally, Mr. Schultz.
I do not at all. Kaufman Concepts. So we have a favorable staff report. I think the staff report does a good job of addressing the context of this request. I just want to highlight a couple of points. As you know, this is a text amendment, so it applies throughout the district. Generally, Queen Anne's County has very flat topography, and a variance requires that there be something unique about your parcel or the request that warrants a deviation from the standard. So it's interesting that there were height variance requests. If I'm ever here before one, I don't want to have that prejudged. So there may be, there might be a property with steep slopes, or there might be a reason that justifies it. But I think a variance is a tough way to get approval to deviate from a bulk standard when the topography is really flat. It's hard to justify a variance request for a height change. When you look at other districts that the suburban commercial can be around, 30 feet is an aberration. So the suburban estate zoning district, your non-residential height in that district is 45 feet. Residential heights are 35 feet. The ag district, which is what suburban commercial is often adjacent to, allows 40 feet for residential structures. So 40 feet is not unusual. It's lower than the height standard for non-commercial or non-residential and suburban estate. It's the same as the residential height standards in the ag district. And importantly, we're not proposing any changes to the floor area ratio. So this isn't about getting more development. In our mind, this is about making more efficient use of land, reducing potential impervious surface, reducing stormwater, reducing runoff by allowing something to be slightly more vertical, and also providing additional flexibility for design. Because if you have a 30-foot height limit, you may be able to build a building with a flat roof, that if you can get to 40 feet, you could have a peaked roof, you could have additional flexibility in roof style and roof design. So we think this enhances the flexibility and quality of design. We think it enhances the potential environmental sensitivity of a site design by reducing footprints, but without changing floor area ratios, we're not increasing the development density or yield. That's not what this is about. And so if there are
Do you
questions.
have any building plans? Because we haven't seen anything to the best of my
We don't
knowledge.
have a specific building, I mean, we're looking at a variety of different concepts for different uses, and that's obviously what drove the concern that, hey, this height limit of 30 feet, doesn't give you the flexibility to have a steeper pitch roof and affect some of the architectural design components, but we don't have a specific proposal. The staff report recommends approval. If you have questions, I'm happy to address them, but we think this is in line with the other districts that the SC district may be adjacent to, and again, it's not about increasing development, it's about reducing the impervious surface and providing greater flexibility on architecture.
Can I correct one point? All Board of Appeals variances were approved. All the height variances. Sorry about that.
So it may also have the side effect of slightly reducing the Board of Appeals workload.
Madam Chair, may I ask a question of staff?
Sure.
Ms. Jones, do you have any rationales to why that 30 feet existed in the SC historically?
So
Versus, in reference to Mr. Showalter's comments about varying heights over varying district types?
So if you're looking at some of the other similar districts, there are, like the suburban residential district, that's a 30-foot non-residential building height, so maybe that's the similarity there. Also, there is some history. The suburban commercial district was kind of, at one point in time, altered. Basically, they took all the suburban commercial that was on the island and created the Kent Island Suburban Commercial District, and then the suburban commercial district stayed basically outside of the island, essentially. The KISC is still 30 feet, but that's another similarity. But the most recent height change to the code was to the suburban estate in 2008, which was 35 feet to 45 feet. So there hasn't been drastic changes to any of the districts, but there has been some.
Thanks.
Any questions from the commissioners? Mr. Reese, any questions?
No, ma'am, thank you.
Okay. So can we get a,
Public comment.
oh yeah, public comment. Any public comment? There being none? Can we get a resolution?
Madam Chair, be it resolved that the Planning Commission make a favorable recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners regarding citizen-sponsored text amendment 25-03 to amend the existing non-residential building height from 30 feet to 40 feet within the suburban commercial district. The Planning Commission provides the following findings: the zoning and subdivision regulations, annotated Code of Maryland land use article, the comprehensive plan, and would like to incorporate the findings from the staff report as part of my motion.
I get a second.
Second.
All in,
I'm sorry to interrupt. I would just make the motion finding consistency with the zoning and subdivision regulations, finding that the character of the zone and suitability for the increased height from 30 to 40 feet, and then it's consistent with the comprehensive plan.
okay.
Okay, Madam Chair, may I amend my motion to include council's comments, please?
Sure. Second?
Second.
All right, all in favor of the
Aye.
resolution? Any opposed? So moved.
Thank you for your time. Easy peasy.
County Ordinance 2504, Stephanie?
Yeah. So 2504 is to add daycare centers to the Airport Protection and Kent Island Gateway District. A daycare center is a building that provides daycare for children and adults on a regular basis. That's the definition. The airport district is located obviously south of the bridge when you come across. Previously, there were a text amendment to the airport district in 2003 that altered the uses of the district, and then also there was a map amendment that was also with that altered the district of 3 of those properties from UC to airport district. So if you're looking at the airport district itself for consistency, currently educational uses are permitted. Daycare is obviously kind of consistent with educational uses. It's just that daycare's really addressed kids that are 2 and younger. Educational is more obviously older than 2 if you're looking at that. If you look at the use of daycares throughout the entire county, through all the districts, they're pretty much either permitted by outright or through a conditional use in all the districts. So that's another point to consider. And then also, if you look at the state requirements for daycares, the way we align it with our definitions with the state are a little different. In the future, we probably should align that, but at this point in time, it's favorable to add daycare centers to the list of permitted uses in the airport district.
Do we have any questions from the commissioners?
Is it taken out?
Madam,
I'm sorry, go ahead,
Madam
Jeff.
Chair, I do have one question. Is family childcare or family home childcare gonna be included in that?
Yes, so your daycare center would be all encompassing of those 2.
Thank you.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, my question is just a simple, was it left out for a reason when it was done, or is just?
The text amendment, the previous text
Yeah,
amendments,
when
so
the zoning changed,
the
correct?
zoning change of those 3 parcels within the airport district changed from UC to airport. Within the UC district, daycares are permitted. Once it became airport district, essentially it's not listed as a permitted use anymore. The educational use does allow, like I said, for some type of educational, and there is currently an existing educational portion of that, but in order for daycares to be permitted and for children under 2, it has to be added to the code.
Was there a discussion or anything
no, it was-
regarding?
It was not brought up. no.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't there a daycare-ish
Yeah.
facility?
So there is a school.
Literally 1,000 feet south of this district?
There's one in the district. There's a school, but are you looking like
It's just south of Farmer John's,
It was a
before you get to Irene Way.
okay, yes, there's a, I think,
kindergarten.
Yes,
yeah.
KinderCare, thank you.
yes,
Right, so it's,
similar to that, yes.
but that's not in the AP,
Correct.
that's not in this district, but it's
Correct.
a neighboring
Yep.
district. Thank you.
But this would allow all the townhomes directly on the east side of Route 8 to then become home family child care centers in that area. If I
Ellendale.
understand correctly.
You're referring to Ellendale, right?
No, Ellendale is not zoned airport.
No, but it would be
Do
in,
you have the current, do you have the mapping?
I can bring it up. Give me 1 second.
Are the new townhomes in that area? In the airport? At the marina?
Yes. Give me 1 second. Oh, geez, I have to sign in.
I think what Mr. Reese was referring to is the residential units, right, Mr. Reese, Ellendale? Or are you also referring to the ones that are that we just passed 2 months ago or so, around the marina?
Yeah, both.
Both. But I don't believe Ellendale's not in the APIG or
Right.
APKIG.
I'm pretty sure if you just Google it, it'll, yeah. It is.
If you do say so yourself.
Okay, does that, can you see it clear enough?
Yeah,
If I
that's
zoom
helpful.
in
Thank
too
you,
far,
yes.
it'll,
Yeah, so Ellendale's not in it,
Right.
but the new townhouses are.
yes.
Right.
Okay. I can't imagine them taking a $2 million townhouse and making it a child care center.
No, but it's mixed use.
Precocious children.
No, not the townhouses, no. No.
There's
Yeah.
office space there, maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, there is some office space.
Yes, right.
Towards the restaurant. Okay. Any other questions from the commissioners? I get a resolution?
Madam Chair?
Public comment.
Oh, public comment.
I'm sorry, as an applicant, can we be heard on this?
Sure. You need to come up, and you have up to 3 minutes.
She's an applicant.
She's the applicant.
Applicant.
Oh,
Let him come to the table.
Oh. I'm sorry, I thought you would have come up if you were in the room. Sure.
Good morning, Genevieve McFarland with Stevens Palmer on behalf of applicant 214 Bay Manor 21666 LLC. With me today, I have Christopher Nutter, who is a partner of the applicant. I have Khadija Robena, who is a tenant of the building. And the reason that we're here today to ask that this get a favorable recommendation to the county commissioners. If Mr. Nutter, if you want to just give a really brief overview of the project.
All right, briefly, it's Bay Manor.
You have to get up to the microphone.
Sorry. Briefly, it's Bay Manor, right across the bridge by the marina. It's a mixed-use project. I'm a small partner in it. It has 60 apartment units and about 18,000 square feet of commercial retail. We are currently 33% under lease, signed leases for the commercial, and actually, interestingly enough, 33%, 20 of the apartments are leased.
Sorry, that's a script.
We received the U of O late October of '24, so things are moving nicely. It was not a good time to actually get the U of O because of the holidays coming up in the winter, but we're starting to see some more activity, a lot more activity on the commercial for sure. So we're very excited about the project and having the daycare there.
And I have Khadija Robena, who owns the daycare. Tip Top Tots is the business. I want to make sure I get that right. If you want to just give a brief overview about what's going on and the space and, why we're bringing this amendment.
Sure. Hello, my name is Khadija Robina. I'm the owner of Tip Top Tots Early Learning Center. We currently have 2 child care centers in Kent County and 1 in Waldorf. We are interested in putting a Montessori program on Kent Island. So it's a little bit different than the traditional daycare program based on the philosophies of Dr. Maria Montessori. But we really want to start with those ages infants and up. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. I have lived in Stevensville in 2022. I have a 3-year-old, and at the time when I was looking for daycare for him in the area, it was all full. We have about 80 families on our wait list for Kent Island, and 50 of them are for children 0 to 2. So this is definitely a need in the community, and we're interested in not only bringing an additional daycare center, but a Montessori program, which the surrounding areas, is very limited in its offerings.
So staff did a great job, Stephanie did a great job putting together the report. It was very comprehensive, and certainly we're here to answer any questions that you may have about the specific project and why we brought this amendment forth. But otherwise, we ask for a favorable recommendation to the county commissioners.
Okay, thank you. Can I get public comment? Is there any more questions from the commissioners now that you know it's a Montessori?
Madam Chair, I do have a question for the applicant. How many children do you intend to place in this facility? Pier 1 Road is very limited, traffic on Route 8 is very extensive, and providing a large child care facility may impact traffic coming in at that unique intersection.
Right now, we're limited to 60 children.
60?
60, yes.
Thank you.
How many square feet is this school?
3,360 square feet. 4 classrooms.
Madam Chair, I also just want to clarify that while this use may be Montessori, this particular application, it would be permitted for any type of daycare within the
Right.
district.
Right. Do we have any questions? Comments? All right. Public comment? Can I get a resolution?
Madam Chair, resolved that the Planning Commission makes a favorable recommendation to the Board of Commissioners regarding citizen-sponsored text agreement 25-04 to add daycare centers to the list of permitted uses in the Airport Protection Kent Island Gateway District. Planning Commission provides that the findings are consistent with zoning and subdivision regulations, are consistent with the Annotated Code of Maryland Education Health General Article, and consistent with the comprehensive plan.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Ordinance 2505. And is Douglas Scott Gray Jr. here? Please come up to the main. Stephanie?
All right, for text amendment 2505, the applicant is proposing to add indoor shooting ranges to the list of permitted uses within the town center district, and also to include that there has to be a minimum of 100 feet from any residential use. You'll probably remember we did a text amendment on this very, very recently in 24, but I will read you the definition of the indoor shooting range just so it's enclosed facility designed for the shooting of firearms or commercial, recreational, or training purposes. Also, it includes gunsmithing, a retail sale for firearms and related equipment, designated for physical training, and also as a firearm-related educational, can be used for educational purposes. The TC district is generally located in Chester along the Main Street corridor, or 18. Basically, it is used for a mixed use of residential and non-residential uses. Also, it's kind of designed around a pedestrian-oriented neighborhood. Also, when we did the previous text amendment, we had legal guidance that this use should be added to commercial and industrial districts. So we added it to the airport district, the urban commercial district, the suburban industrial district, and the suburban industrial business employment center. So those were the 4 districts that it was added to in 2024. But we did not add it to the TC district because the TC is specific to that pedestrian-oriented neighborhood. Also, because if you look at the permitted uses in the town center, it excludes all but only 5 uses when it comes to light industrial uses. So it kind of says, we're not going to include those, but only these. So those were the reasons the TC was not included when we did the text amendment. I know we had some questions when we did the previous amendment about sound. There is COMAR standards for that, so I just wanted to bring that to your attention again. Staff recommends an unfavorable recommendation specifically because of the reasonings I said why we didn't add it to the TC district last year. So if you have any questions.
Any questions from the commissioners to Stephanie? Mr. Gray,
Yes, ma'am.
would you like to?
Sure. So Douglas Gray, I own RS Shooting Sports. We're a retail firearms store on Kent Island. We are currently off of Route 18, Route 18 in Chester, kind of behind Safeway. my reasoning for this is I feel like there's a lot of properties currently underutilized and vacant in the TC district. I grew up here. I lived here my whole life. I want to use an existing building to grow my business into, and TC would just give me more opportunity to do that. As far as commercial and industrial uses, looking through the code, bear with me a moment here. Town center zoning, the way I'm reading this, and correct me if I'm wrong, there it is. Permitted uses, it states, let me find my place here, 18.1 under PP, all light industrial uses except, and then there's 5 exclusions that are not permitted. So I don't know if Stephanie can clarify that.
Yeah, you're right. Sorry, I
It's
had it
the
backwards.
opposite, not that it doesn't allow for industrial uses, but it also has high commercial, low commercial, and medium commercial uses. I'm not gonna argue the merits of whether it's a commercial or industrial use. I mean, I run a retail shop now. My plan is to expand that and add a shooting range. We are very heavy foot traffic, and our thought is, well, when people are already going out into the community for recreation and leisure, we kind of fit that as well in our view. But I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Can you show us on here, unless I'm not seeing it, where exactly he's
The
talking
town
about?
center, is that what you're looking? So it's this blue. So I know there's just a lot of blue, but it's this one here that kind of follows.
But where is he,
Oh, your current,
that he wants to put it in?
We're not necessarily considering using our current space, just somewhere near where we are in kind of that same area.
In the town center?
Yeah, most of it is zone town center, like that blue all along the 50 and 18 corridor there.
He's currently right across from Barry Waterman's office.
Oh, okay, okay.
Okay.
Shout out,
Yep.
Larry.
I Club One. I've been to your store. You got a good store.
Thank you.
Yeah. But you don't have any place in the, that you're looking at?
We're looking at a lot of them. I mean, we've looked at urban commercial zone places, town center zone places, and our thought is if we're gonna do this, why not use something that already exists and just build out the inside of it? I mean, there's no reason for us to redevelop some land and do some big project if we can use something that already exists.
And under the, Stephanie, under the regulations, there are sound
yeah, in the Maryland
pressure
regulations.
level
Yes.
limits and.
It's environmental noise is what they call it. There
Okay.
are standards for industrial and
Do
commercial.
you know what the decibel reading on that is?
Give me a
don't have
second.
to. I'm
I'll
not
have
gonna
to.
What about the safety of the projectiles, the bullets? How are you gonna contain them?
So the range builder, there's an entire industry that builds indoor shooting ranges,
Sure
and
there
they
is,
all
but-
have their own standards, but it's concrete and steel reinforced. It's essentially a concrete box inside of a building that's made of concrete and steel, and nothing is getting out of that. And as far as the sound, I have reached out to several range builders and asked. None of them have a specific study with a decibel reading outside the building, but they have mentioned to me that an industrial air handler kicking on is about as loud as the noise from shooting when you're outside of the building. They've conducted a couple of tests where they've had to stop the test due to traffic driving by because that was interfering with the readings.
Would you allow automatic weapons?
I would,
Just a question.
assuming we're in compliance with all state, federal, and local laws, yeah.
I'm sorry, tell me again your biggest beef?
So we did a text amendment for
Putting
this
it
last
plainly.
year.
Yes.
So it's very recently we
So
have-
it's okay over by the airport, right?
Yes, so we put it in 4 districts. It was the airport district, the urban commercial district, the suburban industrial business employment center, which is usually a business park, and then also the suburban industrial district. So those are the 4 districts that it was added to. And if you want me to show you where that might be located, I can, but.
No, I
Okay.
get the idea.
So,
I'm just, you know,
and the reasonings it was not added to the TC was because of the intent of the TC district itself, for it being a residential and non-residential mixed use.
to be argumentative, of course. But the one we approved by the airport was right next to a residential area,
Yes.
wasn't it? But it just happened to be a boundary line that separated the two.
Well, you approved it in that district. You didn't actually approve a specific,
But I
Site
thought
plan,
that
but-
the person that, or the entity that was
No.
applying, it was pretty close.
right.
It was pretty close to residential area, because
We haven't
we were
received
talking
anything
about
as of
some
this point.
elderly people that might live next to it, you know, and I remember that comment, and I caught some grief for it. Okay.
The intent of those districts are
are a
different.
little different. They're more industrial and more, not that the TC isn't a commercially driven district, but I would say your urban commercial is even more commercialized than what your TC. If you look at the TC standards, they allow single-family dwellings as a permitted use. So
Right,
that is
does-
one.
But does this, I'm trying to think of what's the definition of industrial then? I mean, I'm sitting on the fence here, quite frankly, but trying to help you too.
We would have never known.
What's the, it doesn't seem like heavy industry to me. Seems like a retail location.
Right. When we received legal guidance for this previous text amendment, it was to put it in commercial and industrial neighborhoods, or districts, sorry. So that was the intent behind the districts that it was placed in. If you're looking-
TC is commercial.
Right, but it
Okay.
has a residential aspect to it.
All right. So that's it. I still don't get a definition of industrial, but okay.
I have it if you want me to
So
read
we
it.
can look it up if you want the specific.
I do.
Light industrial uses include wholesale distribution and manufacturing activities generally conducted indoors where nuisance associated with use such as noise, odor, smoke, and dust are minimal. Blacksmith shops.
Slow down, speak up.
Oh, sorry. Include wholesale distribution and manufacturing activities generally conducted indoors where nuisance associated with the use such as noise, odor, smoke, and dust are minimal. It includes blacksmith shops, boat building, mini warehouses, self-storage facilities, material sales and storage yards, asphalt, concrete mixing, bulk materials, machinery, storage, boat repair, auto repair, carpet and rug cleaning. You want me to read the whole thing?
No, you're good.
Okay. Heavy industrial uses have severe potential for negative impact on the uses located relatively close to them, differ from light industrial uses in that they require unenclosed structures that are large, tall, and unsightly, such as concrete batching plants, have severe potential for generation of odor and may involve large amounts of exterior storage, and because of their scale are likely to have a regional impact, which I would argue, I don't feel that we fall under that. Commercial, maybe, but not industrial, but again, if that's what legal says, then.
I think the important distinction here is that's a decision that's already been made by the county commissioners, is determining that this particular use is commercial industrial. And that's not necessarily what's on the table right now, because that's how it's been defined by your code at this time.
Is it possible to get a variance?
No.
Not for a use.
And I'll just point out, town center, under permitted uses are high commercial, low commercial, medium commercial, and all light industrial uses, except for bulk materials and machinery, food processing and packaging, fuel oil storage, and sales, material sales or storage yards, and mini warehouses. And just like urban commercial permits high commercial, low commercial, medium commercial, and light industrial as well, it's already approved in urban commercial. To me, they look very similar, but again, I'm just asking your opinion and requesting a favorable support.
Stephanie, is there a difference between urban commercial and TC lot sizes?
So the TC, if you're looking at, let me bring it up here. I don't know right off the top of my head.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
No, it's okay.
18-1.
I know. So your non-residential, because it obviously doesn't have residential. Road frontage, building height. Yeah, so it's, am I looking?
Thinking your urban district, the purpose of that is more removed from central area pedestrian areas where individuals may be walking, which is the
Yeah.
intent of the TC.
Right, and the UC is more focused around Route 50. That's the intent of that district, is what it says in the purpose. The TC is more generally looking at 18 and following where 18 is located. So it's, yes, it's commercial uses, but your higher commercial uses, I would say, would be more of the urban commercial as opposed to the town center.
If I may, you've not found a building within the TC that you're planning to use. You just want to go looking at this point?
Correct.
And so,
Got our eyes on a couple, but haven't
So
signed
if-
a lease or anything.
if this amendment did not prevail, it's not a hardship for you to be looking elsewhere. Is there some particular reason that you're interested in the TC district?
Yeah, because the building we're currently in is in that TC zoning district, as
Okay.
well as a lot of the other ones near that location. So if we were to find something appropriate near our current existing business, it would be more ideal for us to just move down the street than over to the back of an industrial park or
Understand.
something like
Okay.
that.
And Mr. Gray?
Yes, sir.
With respect to sort of piggybacking on Mr. Tillman's comments, have you what is the forgetting the word I'm looking for here, the inventory that's out in these other districts that do permit or would permit this more easily? What, do you not find vacancies there? You'd have to start from scratch and build out of the ground? Or does it defer back to what you just said about it would be convenient to sort of be
They're
similarly
kind of all
located?
over the place. Just from knowing the area and living here, and there's a lot of just empty, like, strip mall spaces or buildings that were built back in the 90s that were used and now they're just kind of sitting vacant, things like that.
Right, but I'm saying in other districts, you're suggesting you have limited options, but there are options
Yeah.
to build, to take over an existing space.
Correct. There are other options. My mindset is where we currently are, we have that kind of 18 full traffic flow. We don't have direct access to 50. So all of our current customers are local residents, and we kind of want to keep it in that same general area. But, I mean, obviously, if I can't do it there, then I have to look elsewhere. But I figured, again, reading through the code, I don't see a reason why we shouldn't be allowed to add it as well.
Thanks.
I also want to just add a little bit more about the intent of the zoning district. So if you look at the TC specifically, you're looking at higher density mixed use. And the APKIG is specific for business, commercial, and certain mixed use that doesn't impact the airport use. So it does have that commercial component where your TC does not, in the purpose and intent of it. So while there may be some commercial uses within the TC, it's not the overall intent for that district to be heavy commercial.
Any other questions? Public comment? Do you have anything, Bruce? Okay. There being none, can I get a resolution?
Madam Chair, be it resolved that the Planning Commission make an unfavorable recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners regarding citizen-sponsored text amendment 25-05 to add indoor shooting ranges to the list of permitted uses in the town center district, and to include a setback that the use must be located 100 feet from any residential uses. The Planning Commission finds, like to incorporate the findings from the staff report that it is inconsistent with the zoning and subdivision regulations and the comprehensive plan.
I get a second.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No opposed.
You are opposed? Okay. We have one opposed. Jeffrey?
He's in favor.
I'm in favor.
Okay. One opposed. Sorry.
All right, thank you for your time.
Okay, so we have a couple issues I'd like to bring up. One is, based on today's hearings, can we get a resolution that we put something into the records that strengthens our position, or do away with it, one or the other? On the
Specific to the text amendments?
no, specific to the buffering.
Oh, the previous case that Doug was hearing, okay.
Out to that particular decision, or you're looking for strengthening the code when
I would like
considering
to
a
strengthen it,
modification?
that they have to do the buffering, maybe even before they start building, but it needs to get
You're looking at a
done.
code modification,
Yes,
so that the buffer has to be enforced prior to issuing building permits or something of that nature.
exactly.
We can, if that's a recommendation of the planning commission, you all are
I think
very,
it needs to be strengthened because it's ambiguous.
you all can require text amendment, or basically be applicants for text amendments. So that if that's something that you're favorable of or wanting to see, then I can draft something, yeah.
What do you think?
I completely agree. I think it's something that the clearer it is, even to be honest, the more blunt, I think the less we're going to have issues coming up before us. And so I support the idea. Thank you.
What do you think, Tom?
It seems like we'd be tying up loose ends by doing that. Remove the ambiguity.
I agree.
I agree.
Okay.
So, all right. So
So-
is there
Do we have to wait till next
a
No, we can do it now.
specific
We can do
change
it
you would
right.
like to see? Like someone mentioned, making sure that it's basically planted before, any lots are built on, or, before a C of O can be granted for the first property, or is there any certain?
Is that a problem with, I wish Rob was here. Where is he? What, but we need him. Where is he?
I think that's the question. So as of right now, when a development, when a site plan is approved, when typically are the developers putting in this buffer? Because that's when you need to stop it. Right now, they've obviously been issued building permits. So could you, after site plan approval and recordation, require that the buffer be in prior to issuance of a residential building permit, which would hold up their residential development?
Yeah, that could hold it up for what, 6 months or so?
I mean, they can, right now, they don't have to plan it till, yes, they closed it, the last house is built. So they can delay it that far. We could.
You could reverse it so that it's prior to the first house being.
Correct, and then also, I'm thinking about the,
But then he could be sitting on the builder could be sitting on a house that is constructed and sitting there for 5-6 months, right?
So if it was prior to issuance of building permit, if there were a pre-existing house, yes, it would have no effect on it, but they couldn't further develop, which is generally when they get a site plan. I mean, I think most of these come in for actual residential developments,
It
not
could be.
existing communities, or,
it could be similar to site plan too, where it could be within, with site plan, you have to do it within 2 growing seasons of approval, or within, so that would speed it up. Once the subdivision is approved, you'd have to plan it within then. I would likely defer to Rob because he has more history with.
As a 17-year.
Waiting on you. Waiting on you.
Since you are the 17-year aficionado,
No, you're most senior. How's that?
I think if you attach it to the building permit, it's easier to track internally, because once they've submitted something, there's like an action in the office at least, but you might have other thoughts.
What's the question? I'm sorry.
the question is, we want to strengthen the buffering,
Good idea.
okay?
the timing
So-
of the buffering. specifically.
How can we go about doing that without putting a burden on the builder if he builds something that he has to wait till the next planting season to be able to have occupants?
So right now, it's, I think, a year or 2 planting seasons after the last permit is issued.
Yeah, well, that's too long.
And some of these may never be built out, or like this other one, it's been, what, since 2005, it's 20 years. So when they submit, we review, you approve, or if it's a minor, we approve. And then it gets recorded. I mean, you could, the text amendment could be a certain time after recordation. I don't think you could do it before recordation, because then if they sit on it.
Recordation of what? Of
The subdivision.
Of the
plat.
subdivision,
So when they
okay.
create the lots. If you try to require before recordation and the market tanks and they never build, well, now they're out the money to plant it. So I don't really necessarily think that would be fair. But the second they record it, and you give them whatever time you think is applicable, 1 planting season.
I don't know that the time matters as much as just the enforceability, that you're just gonna do this,
Yeah.
right?
I mean,
You just gotta do it.
Yeah, you can
And
time it
it's gotta be
with
before the last lot's sold.
prior to the first permit being issued. So the second they try to pull a permit, they have to plant.
Right.
I think that's easier and internally wise, process wise. If you put a time on it after it's recorded, it's gonna have to be tracked internally, but if you attach it to the building permit, then
We
at
can-
least you know.
All right,
there's a
should-
tangible time.
Madam Chairman, if I may, should we just give you guys a month to talk about it internally and
I was gonna
making a proposal to us and that we
Yeah,
can
get a
sink our teeth
proposal to
into
us
instead
next
of trying to
month.
fix it today?
How long will it take after that?
For an amendment, so you'd make a recommendation, we'd have to draft it. You'd recommend it to the county commissioners. They have to hold a hearing, which their process usually takes about 2 to 3 months, and then it's another 2 months before it's effective.
So it's a 6-month process, okay,
Yeah, about that.
that's fine.
Could be longer depending on.
Would
Amy?
be an amendment to the existing buffer standards.
Yes,
It may be an amendment to the current timing standard. And then the new language that would say potentially prior to the issuance of the first, maybe CO. So something where we can send an inspector out and they're trying to get something from us, but you can't have it till it's planted.
CO might be more appropriate, because then you can put it as
Certificate of
a condition on
occupancy?
the building permit.
Yeah.
If you have the condition on the building permit, that applicant at least knows, oh, that builder better have been doing
And that's,
something.
and that would be with the first house. So as they're building, they can be planting and the
Yeah.
two finish.
At the same time, essentially.
Okay.
That would be appropriate.
I was just going to add that hearing your priorities will help us to draft something. So is it a timing issue, or are there any other issues you'd want us to look at? Because when we bring something to you, we'd like it to kind of hit the high points of the concerns. And if it's just timing, I think that we've all been talking about the timing already. So I think that's easy enough to address.
This has been a bugaboo for Vivian too,
Yeah, and
enforcement of this.
One of the things I was hearing from my fellow commission members was for property owners to know this is gonna happen, that this is, you don't get to move in and see this wide expanse. I think, were you the one that said that? This wide expanse of field, and you, just to let them know there really is not a choice. And so that for this to be in place, either already in place or visually in place, however you're gonna incorporate that into that language.
Well,
I
it
don't
is
know.
in the land records.
Ah.
So it is recorded
yeah,
on
but
the
how many
plat.
people go home and read their land records?
None.
Well, even if they do, they may not
Understand.
appreciate what that
Right.
view shed
Correct.
change is or
Yeah,
might be.
exactly.
So currently, it isn't, right, the reason we're having this discussion, right, in a nutshell, is because they're just getting to the end of build-out. So what if, I mean, in theory, if they never build out and they just sit on that last,
Never gets
it'll
built.
never get built.
And
Well, don't tell the applicant that.
Yeah.
But yeah,
As long as they keep one lot.
yeah, exactly, that's my point.
The final permit's
Yeah,
not
let's
an
close
issue.
this loophole.
Would it be retroactive to, I didn't think so. So with that in
Have to be a
mind,
condition at the time of the site plan.
we don't have a whole lot of these coming in anymore because the septic bill curtailed major subdivisions.
I mean, so then you'd probably be better off just to remove the modification ability.
That's what I was gonna get at. So if you delete the modification portion,
They have to do it.
they have to do what's approved currently. That's probably, in my mind, you can add new language in case the code or the septic bill ever changed. It wouldn't be in effect, but you may also want to take out the modification.
There's no
language.
possibility of modification.
Yeah.
Or
And then-
change modify to reduce, given certain findings, so that they know it can be reduced, not eliminated.
I don't know that I'd say reduced, because I like Mr. Tillman. A modification also includes an increase if we don't feel like
Yeah.
it's pertinent. Or strike it altogether. What you're approved with is what you have to do.
Right.
And that, I think, would apply retroactively.
And we're okay with what we approve, or we wouldn't be approving it.
Exactly.
Can we do that?
Yeah.
That's fine.
And you'll submit it to us next month? Good. I'm sorry, Jeffrey,
Just asking.
do you have something?
No, ma'am.
Do you agree with that? Next month, they'll come back with it? Okay.
Yes.
Remove the modification. And
I think add language,
Going
correct me if I'm wrong,
forward.
add language to say any new, there's
At
no,
this
you
point.
can't do that. And then to strike the modification language so that all the old ones also have to comply.
so you don't have these.
Makes it retroactive.
All right, now to take care of your tracking, you want to do it from the time that they start?
Well, so for the new ones, yeah, it would be upon issuance of the first certificate of occupancy. For the retro, I don't think.
Well, what I'm concerned about is if the builder, I don't mean to say he, but the builder builds a house and he has to wait a planning season, so he's like 6 months sitting on a couple $100,000. I don't want to put them in that position to where they're hurting.
No, and I would say tie it to the first building, the first structure, getting occupancy, regardless of season. Then it's on him. Water it. I mean, July's a bad time to plant. And we have an expert that'll tell you. It's probably not good.
Thank you for that, yeah.
But people irrigate things. I irrigate the trees in my yard, so it's a cost of doing
Okay.
business, I think.
You could also, Vivian can do this, she can make a condition on the building permit so that the applicant knows that this is required by the time that they want to have their C of O, that they have to.
Good, they have to have it
And they'll at
done.
least have that indication before it gets to their C of O and be like, oh, it's not planted.
Absolutely.
Rob, I would try to avoid forcing them to plant in July.
Okay.
If we can afford, if we can figure out how to do that and give them the opportunity to try to get the planting done in the fall. Fall's the best time, I would say. But the spring, certainly, but avoid that, the heat of the summer. That's gonna potentially add a ton of cost to the
Could we write
project
in
for
the
'em.
first occupancy or one planting season, maybe?
Right.
Something
That
like
gives
that.
the flexibility of seasonal planting.
Something, yeah.
Then what do you
just
do
get
if
a
they
better
don't
chance of
They
it.
don't do it.
do
That's the
it? You
enforcement,
can't take their
because
C
then
of O
it gets-
back.
8 houses built.
You're gonna put a monetary fine if they don't
There you go.
do it within the planning season?
They would have to bond their landscaping, so we would always get the landscaping surety. I
So you're
mean,
not gonna tie it
it's
to
really
the
difficult
building
pull a
permit?
bond
Right.
on somebody.
I mean, I would make it more a monetary amount per day if they either don't get it within so many days of building or certificate of occupancy or within the planning season.
Fine.
I don't know.
So
I don't
could-
care, I mean, yeah.
Could you ask the staff to draft it, and is it proper to circulate it prior to the meeting to make sure that concerns and,
You could circulate it, and then if you had a particular concern,
Circulate it to planning commission
discuss with
members.
staff, yeah, but don't discuss amongst yourselves.
right, okay.
Is there any way to trigger the existing developments to plant prior to the last permit? I don't think so.
We can look at it, but I don't,
Just require they or no more modification, but it could, again, sit for however long until they build the last one.
Sell the last one eventually, you know?
Eventually,
I
yes,
mean,
they will.
They will. Pretty sure.
In most cases, the value of the lot and the house package far outweighs the landscape.
That's right.
Okay, for the commissioners, is there any other housekeeping that we want to take care of while we're here?
I do have a question for Amy,
Okay,
but I don't want to, is it okay now?
sure.
So Amy, I asked you about this a while back. We have that major construction project going on in Queen Anne with no permits, no signage, no permission asked, hooked into a septic tank somewhere, apparently, but nobody knows. Did you look into it at all? I'm talking about the state has decided to build a gun range right on our property line, right there by DNR, next to DNR and the Armory in Queen Anne. It's my understanding from the construction guy, they're going to tie the septic into the existing septic at, I don't know if it's gonna be at DNR or at the Armory. I don't even really know if the DNR's just tied into the Armory. We don't know. They're gonna be moving in tens of thousands of yards of dirt to build a berm all the way around the property, which is not a small property. And they're gonna build two fairly large buildings, open-ended, open on each end. So I'm sure it's gonna funnel the sound right to my home, half mile away.
Wow.
And there's nothing, sorry about your luck, there's not a sign one out there.
What's the deal?
So, the state and federal government has the authority to exempt themselves from local standards. Not all agencies do so, but that has been the history on this property. We don't really have recourse.
Okay. Did we even ask about the septic?
I do have a call in to the health officer about that, yes.
Is it still John?
Yes, yes it is.
He's been there forever.
Yes, he has.
All right, well, maybe he'll call you back.
Almost as long as
I bet you
Mr. Gunter.
I think John might have him beat.
I will not be here as long as Mr.
Yeah, John's been here a while.
But I will get follow-up to you from Mr. Nickerson.
Yeah. They're gonna build a 30-foot tall berm all the way around the property for noise control. That's what the boy told me. They're gonna haul in, they're figuring, I can't remember now if he said 909,000 loads of dirt to build this thing.
Does that mean the county's gaining dirt? I mean, is that
Apparently it's coming off the solar farms.
topsoil probably, yeah.
I'm kidding you. I'm kidding. All right, thank you.
Okay, is there any other business? All right, then I'll take my favorite